Well, is this thing working? Can you hear me? Chris, can you guys hear me out there? Is that a little more volume, please? It's sprinkling outside now. So, can you guys hear me any better now? So I always got to blame Mom because I wouldn't even get up here unless she bugged me and called me. Because it's not my ideal thing to come up here and speak, but Mom likes to always call us and see if there's a Wednesday or something that we'd be interested in, and she's got to coordinate with all our schedules, and Mom does a lot to try to make all that work so she can keep all that done. So thanks for making another day available for me. But, you know, when Mom had called me and asked me if I would speak again, it didn't take long before a thought crossed my mind on what I actually wanted to talk about, and it came to me rather quickly. And the thought process that came to me was taking responsibility for your actions. It's very easy to blame somebody else for your actions or mislead somebody for your actions, or, you know, the word Stephen used up here, you know, swallow your pride, because your pride kind of gets in the way and you don't want to take the fall for something that you're doing. And I don't know if you guys are familiar. I was doing a little bit of research on the internet as I was doing some reading and everything. I was like, well, maybe I'll put some facts in with taking responsibility for your actions. And I didn't really find anything specific, but I found one thing that popped up when I looked up, you know, taking responsibility for your actions. Has anybody ever heard of the 1970s comedian Flip Wilson? Anybody? I never heard of him. I didn't do any type of digging on that, but that name popped up, and you guys might know what I'm getting ready to say because of the title, Responsibility for Your Actions, a phrase that he popularized during that era. If you do something wrong, who do you blame? The devil made me do it. He popularized that phrase, well, the devil made me do it, so obviously it's not my fault, right? So I wanted to discuss a very rudimentary topic that kind of came to mind, and everybody's familiar with it. And it's, you know, I'm going to talk about Adam and Eve for the first portion of this. And I want to open in Genesis chapter 1, verse 31. It's where God describes, and I'm going to read several verses as I'm going through this to kind of hopefully back up each thing I'm saying. But in Genesis 1:31, it's talking about the perfect world. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And the evening and the morning were the sixth day. You know, he's on the sixth day, just before he rests, and he's looking at everything he made. There is no sin. There is no immortality. There's no actions that are going to be frowned upon right now. Everything he did was perfect. You can't, there is no sin at this point. And he looked at it, and he said, it is very good. And as he continued on, and Genesis chapter 2, verses 17, this is where Jesus begins to walk with Adam into the garden. And he says, but the tree of knowledge of good and evil, thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day thou eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die. So you look at that verse, and God gave him everything. All these other things are yours. You have dominion over the animals, the plants, the trees. Everything is yours. But this one tree, if you eat of it, you shall surely die. It doesn't say you might. It doesn't say possibly. It says shall. It's a command. You're going to die if you eat of this tree. There is a consequence for this action that you're going to take. You're going to be held responsible for this consequence if you take part, if you eat of this tree. And moving on, Genesis chapter 3, verses 4 through 6. At this point, God has now added Eve into the picture because God didn't find that it was good that Adam was by himself. And Genesis 3, 4 through 6, and the serpent said unto the woman, ye shall not surely die, for God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. And when the woman saw of the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and the tree to be desired to make one wise, she took the fruit thereof and ate, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he ate. Now, you can only imagine, you've got all of this stuff that you can partake in, and you've got this little person in your ear. Now that tree, it's just some low-hanging fruit. That is some delicious, don't you just want to see what that tastes like? You're not going to die. It can't be that bad. It's not what he says. He just doesn't want you to be as all-knowing and all-powerful and have the wisdom that he has and see as he sees and does as he does. You'll be okay. So Satan puts a little whisper in the ear and entices her and beguiles her. I'll get to that verse in just a second. And convinces her to take part in fruit. He sold the idea that the consequences are okay. This action that you're going to take, it's not all that bad. The consequences that are going to come from this action, you'll be okay. And so, after, in that last part, it says, she took the fruit thereof and ate, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he ate. At that point in time, both Adam and Eve, they had a free will. They both chose to sin against the Lord and eat of the tree. Neither of them were forced. Satan didn't take Eve's hand and say, here, stick this in your mouth and take a bite of it. He didn't force her to do that. He tempted her with the knowledge of what he has, because Satan was a very smart person. And he tempted her, and she fell for the temptation and took part in that fruit. This was one of the first tests of faith and obedience that you see in the Bible. It was the first test. Are you going to, believe in what I'm telling you? Are you going to obey? Because if you don't, there are going to be severe consequences. And it's not just severe consequences, it's death. It doesn't get any worse than that. There is death that is going to follow these consequences. And, a verse kind of splitting this up for just a second, Samuel 15, verse 22. Chris, if you can turn to that for me real quick. In 1 Samuel 15:22, it says, And Samuel said, Hath the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifice as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to hearken than the fat of the rams. I grew up, mom always, I can't tell you how many times I heard obedience is better than sacrifice. Obedience is better than sacrifice. Obedience is better than sacrifice. What you're about to do isn't going to be worth it. Mom probably told us that 10,000 times growing up. Obedience is better than sacrifice. What you are about to do, is it worth the sacrifice in which is going to happen because of your actions? And now you're going to place somebody else at fault, or you're going to blame somebody else, or there's going to be a small ripple effect that's going to cause because of your small actions going to affect a whole lot more people than just yourself. So flipping back over to Genesis chapter 3, verses 7 through 8. I'm reading several of these verses in Genesis. This is when they realize they're naked. And the eyes of them both were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves things to gird about. And they heard the voice of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and Adam and his wife hid themselves in the presence of the Lord God amongst the trees of the garden. What is the cool of the day? What do you think that is? The evening hours, 5, 6, 7, 8? I don't think daylight savings was a part back then, but they're walking around in the cool of the day, and they realize something about themselves. They're a little embarrassed in the fact that, hey, we don't have clothes on. There's something else going on here. They're starting to see right from wrong and, good and bad, because, they partook in this fruit that they weren't supposed to be a part of, and now they realized, hey, I've done something I should not have done. Genesis 3, verses 11 through 12. This is the section that I thoroughly enjoy here. This is where Adam blames his wife and so on and so forth. It says, And he said, Who told thee that thou wast naked? Hast thou eaten of the tree thereof? I commanded thee that thou shouldest not eat. And the man said, this is a good part, The woman that thou gavest to be with me, she gave me of the tree, and I ate. Now, I see two people being blamed right there. He's not taking any responsibility for his actions. She did not force his hand to eat that apple. Now, I can see where she probably went up and, Adam, this is so delicious, and convinced her, coerced her, beguiled, whatever word you want to use right there to make that apple look, or fruit, whatever fruit it is, so delicious. But Adam blames two people right there. He says, the woman that thou gavest to me, blaming God, pointing the finger. I would have never done this, God. This would not have happened if you didn't give me her. And then the finger is then immediately pointed at her. Now, it's her fault because you gave her to me. So two people are being blamed for his actions, taking part in taking a bite of that fruit. Verse 13 says, Eve stated the same thing. And this is where, before I read that, this is kind of where I get the phrase, the devil made me do it. Eve kind of popularized it a little bit before he did. She said, and the Lord God said unto the woman, what is this that thou hast done? And the woman said, the serpent beguiled me, and I ate. Now, I can only imagine, I kind of tossed it up there for a little picture there for a second. You know, Satan is in your ear holding or pointing at this apple or this peach or whatever kind of fruit it was, you know, that this here is going to be the most delicious thing that you are ever going to take part in. And he convinces her to take a bite of that fruit, and in return, she brings it over to the husband, and the husband also does eat. Now, it doesn't take a whole lot for Sarah. If Sarah wants to do something, and she wants to do something, I don't know if she tells me to do it, we're probably going to do it. It doesn't take Sarah a whole lot to convince me to do something if she wants something. Happy wife, happy life, right? So Adam's probably thinking a similar, well, she took a bite, I might as well take a bite with her, and if something happens, it's automatically going to be her fault. Well, you know, both Adam and Eve, during this situation, chose to blame somebody else for their actions instead of recognizing the fact that they simply chose to disobey the Lord on their own free will. They chose that. I'm going to finish up these last couple of verses before I get to the main point. Genesis chapter 3, verses 14 through 19. It kind of discusses how God places punishment, or not necessarily punishment, but you see the repercussions of these actions on Satan, on the man, and of the woman, just because each one played a part, and it caused somebody else to fail. And the Lord God said unto the serpent, because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all the cattle and above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly shalt thou go, and the dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed, and it shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. Until the woman, he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. In sorrow thou shalt bring forth children, and thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. And unto Adam he said, because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife, and hast eaten of the tree which I commanded thee, saying, thou shalt not eat of it, cursed is the ground for thy sake. In sorrow shalt thou eat of it all the days of thy life. Thorns also and thistles shall it bring forth to thee, and thou shalt eat of the herb of the field. And the sweat of thy face thou shalt eat bread till thou return unto the ground, for out of it wast thou taken. For dust thou art, and unto dust thou shalt return. Your actions have consequences, and you are responsible for your actions. Now, there are three things that I think play a part in your actions. The first being pride. Pride is a difficult thing to swallow sometimes, to take responsibility for those actions. The second thing is deceit. You know, I don't want to take responsibility, so you deceive somebody by way of words or actions or something to manipulate what you may have done. And the third thing is just 100% blame. I'm going to take zero responsibility. It is 100% your fault, not mine. And so I want to discuss three of those things. And why is it that our pride gets in the way to where it's that easy for us to put all that blame on somebody else and we can't take any responsibility? I want to read Psalms 36, 2 through 5. And I'm going to read it in two versions because the King James is a little bit difficult to understand sometimes. So I'm going to read it in King James, and then I'm going to read it in the New Living. In King James it says, for he flattereth himself in his own eyes until his iniquity, remember that word, be found to be hateful. The words of his mouth are iniquity and deceit. He hath left off to be wise and to do good. He deviseth mischief upon his bed. He setteth himself in the way that is not good. He abhorreth not evil. Now, I think Brother Chris said we didn't have the New Living in there, so just listen as I read the New Living to you. It says, same verses, sin whispers to the wicked deep within their hearts. They have no fear of God at all. In their blind conceit, they cannot see how wicked they really are. Everything they say is crooked and deceitful. They refuse to act wisely or do good. They lie awake at night, hatching sinful plots. Their actions are never good. They make up no attempt to turn from evil. Now, the word I wanted you to remember was iniquity. And iniquity means immoral, grossly unfair behavior. Our pride gets in the way so much that we're willing to go to extensive circumstances, such as if it involves, for example, your job. If you do something, you're okay for somebody else taking the fall if they lose their job. Even though if it affects them or their family, your actions, you're like, I'm not taking any responsibility. That's not my fault. You know, my pride, I'm not going to let that get in the way to where I'm losing my job. You're okay for somebody else to lose theirs. Or, you know, for example, it might be your pride gets in the way because you have a pretty rough encounter with one of your friends. And whether it's something you did or something you said or whatever the case may be, your actions, you let those get in the way to where you take zero responsibility. You can't even pick up the phone to make a simple apology. You know, I messed up in this part of our thing. You know, whether you said something that kind of made me tick or whatever the case may be, it is still 100% the other person's fault. That pride gets in the way, and there is just absolutely no way you're wrong and they're wrong, and you're not even going to do anything to salvage your relationship with that person. It could be your best friend, it could be a family member, it could be whoever. You have this animosity that builds up because of a little bit of pride that you let get before you and your actions, and you're okay in that friendship or that family member, and it's going to create division and separation because your pride gets in the way and you can't swallow it just for a few seconds and pick up the phone or do whatever to salvage that relationship. And then the other thing that kind of really gets me with that is, you know, pride gets in the way where it's my clout, it's my reputation. Oh, you know, I can't let my reputation of who people actually think I am because of something I did. So you're too scared to let somebody find out and apologize, whatever the case may be, whether it's work-related, friend-related, family-related, your clout, your reputation. You're too prideful to swallow just a little bit of that and let that come down just a little bit, when hindsight 2020 would probably pitch you up here because somebody says, man, he doesn't even have a problem saying, I did that. That's my fault. Can you forgive me? Whatever the case may be. You know, being able to swallow a little bit of that pride and let some part of you come lower, where, you know, how that verse, that song was going up there, you know, I don't remember the exact words, you know, change me, get it out of me, and make me whole again. I want to be 100% you, God. Get all of this nastiness out of me. Our pride gets in the way, so we go as far as to let someone else take that fall because we don't want to be held responsible for our actions. In Proverbs 16, verses 16 through 18, I'm going to read those three, and I'm going to follow it directly right after with another Proverbs. But it says, how much better is it to get wisdom than gold, and to get understanding rather to be chosen than silver? The highway of the upright is to depart from evil. He that keepeth his way perverses his soul. Pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. That's another thing Mom used to say. Pride goeth before a fall. We used to hear that all the time. You know, pride causes a lot of problems if you just can't try to figure out how to remedy that in your own self. Proverbs 13:10 says, here's that word again, only by what? Pride cometh contention, but with the well-advised is wisdom. What is contention? What is contention? Contention is fights, quarrels, disagreements, issues. You know, an example of how your pride, that it's hard to swallow. I'm going to use a couple harsh examples here. How many of you ever seen somebody with a real bad attitude? And you see them storming on down through the room or whatever, and they're getting ready to yell or scream at somebody, and the tension gets way up here, and nobody knows what to do. Nobody knows how to help. Nobody knows how to assist, but that person just thinks they're 100% right, and they can do whatever they want. They're doing no wrong, but whoever they're speaking to, they're going to bring them down to that level. They're going to make them feel about this big, but they have no problem doing that because what is on the inside, they're okay doing what they're doing. And they wonder why, nobody wants to spend time with me or be around me. You know, another example is rudeness. My wife got on me the other day. We're in what is this called? Bojangles drive-through. And I'm getting a $25 gift card for this lady that was watching our cats and, dog and taking care of them for us. And I'm trying to get a $25 gift card in the Bojangles drive-through. And I paid with cash, and they handed me the card. I said, well, can I get a receipt, please? Because I have no idea whether they just handed me a blank card or I actually gave them $25, and this person's getting ready to shove $25 in their pocket. And I said, can I get a receipt? And they said, well, hold on. They called the manager over there, and manager's like looking at it, and we can't get the receipt. I said, you got 6 other computers in there. Somebody's got to be able to give me a receipt here. I need something to show that I got $25 on this card, and I just didn't hand somebody and they put my $25 in their pocket. And so she calls the manager back over there, and she's poking some buttons, and she's like, no, all our registers are down. I'm like, no, they're not all down because you just took my $25. I want to know where my receipt is. And Sarah's like, honey, you are being extremely rude. It's not her fault that she can't get you a receipt. And I'm just like, all right, I'll just take my card. I said, can I get your name and the manager's name so I know who I spoke to just in case I run into an issue here and the person I'm giving this card can't get their food tomorrow? So I made sure I got a couple names, but Sarah was real quick to let me know I was being extremely rude in that drive-through to whoever I was talking to. But it's that easy for just a couple words to come out of your mouth, and you might sound extremely rude or blunt or whoever you're talking to, that you can't even be the lower. That's okay. I'll get it taken care of. Or I could have fixed my tone a little bit or handled that slightly differently to where she didn't feel like, this big, because I just wanted a receipt to show that I had a $25 gift card in my hand. Or, another thing is the gossipers, the whisperers, those people that it's real easy to go up and you go tell somebody about somebody else's actions. I'm not doing anything. I'm just telling you what they're doing. They're doing this, but I'm not doing anything wrong telling you they're doing this. I mean, that's okay, right? I'm going to just come over here and then I go tell somebody else what they're doing. Well, by the time you tell 4, 5, 6, 7 people, this story changes. The problem gets from this big to this big or however big because you've done told 15 people, but your actions are causing a pretty negative ripple effect of how you're handling something. You're responsible for what's getting ready to take place because you thought it'd be a good idea to go over there and just whisper about somebody behind their back. So, that's where I kind of went with pride right there, for example. People with pride think that everybody else has the problem and not them. It's very easy to point that finger and try to fix them and not worry about trying to fix what's in here. Fix your problem. So the next one is deceit. Now, like Adam and Eve, people are always trying to pass the guilt on the devil or blame somebody else for these actions. And in this portion of the message here, I was going to bring all 4 of my kids up, but they're at Vacation Bible School. And I was going to bring them up, and I was going to have them sit right here, Malachi, Ariella, Elijah, and Emma, age group. And I was going to have them sit up here for a second, and I was going to point something out. And I'm talking about deceit, right? I'm bringing deceitfulness up for a second here. And yes, I'm going to use my kids because I don't have perfect angels, unfortunately. So your children, our children, are a reflection of us. We are a reflection of God. Their actions at their age, 4, 6, 8, and 10, I'm responsible for those actions. Whether they do something at school, whether they backtalk mommy and I got to handle something when I get home, whether, they do something to a friend at church or whatever the case may be, or say something they shouldn't say, I'm responsible for their actions because I am the person that has to teach them. Mommy's the person that has to teach them and show them, hey, this is how you're supposed to live. This is what you're supposed to do. And if you act this way, there is going to be consequences. Even though I'm responsible for them, they're going to have consequences for their actions. Now, Daddy has to discipline them, unfortunately, so they understand right from wrong. And unfortunately, we don't have to teach our kids what is wrong. We don't have to teach them how to fib. We don't have to teach them how to be sneaky. We don't have to teach them how to backtalk or say no or get a loud voice. You know how they learn? They learn by watching you. They learn by watching somebody else. They pick it up. Kids are very, very smart. You don't have to teach them how to act that way. And so an example of deceitfulness is... No, you do not. You don't have to teach them how. That is my oldest daughter, Emma, she's good at that. She's getting to the point to where she will flip some eyeballs over, and Daddy has to adjust that accordingly. Emma, and I got to call Emma. You're going to fix your face. Come back over here. And if she doesn't fix her face, Daddy has to handle that a certain way to fix her face. But we're not going to roll her eyeballs. We're not going to pout and look the other way and not do what we're supposed to do. Daddy's got to help her fix her face and do what she's supposed to do. And so, lost train of thought. Sorry about that. So as they're getting older, and I was talking about discipline the children for the deceitfulness. One of the examples I like to use for this kind of scenario is if we're getting ready for dinner. I shouldn't have to, but I do. Don't go get a snack. Don't go fill up on a soda. Don't go fill up on a big old cup of tea right before dinner time. Why is that? Anybody know why you got to tell your kids that? Daddy, my stomach hurts. Daddy, I don't feel good. Daddy, I'm not hungry. No, you're hungry. Mommy just made dinner, and now you're going to eat. And so before dinner time, you got to emphasize, you're not going to have a snack. You're not that thirsty. You can wait until dinner time. You don't need a drink. You got to emphasize these things, because if you don't tell them, well, you didn't tell me I couldn't have it this time. That was Dustin's thing. But I thought that Dustin was but I thought. But anyways, for example, when we're getting ready for dinner time, and one of the things is you can't have a snack. And I go into the kitchen and I go to throw something away, and I see some chocolate candy paper in there, and I'm like, all right, well, somebody just had a snack. And then you walk back into the living room, and you glance around, and you spot the culprit with a little bit of chocolate around their lips. And so at this age, it's usually Ariella or Malachi. Emma and Eli have been popped enough times or disciplined enough times to where they're like, well, Daddy said probably shouldn't eat a snack. I'm not getting a snack. Ariella and Malachi are still learning, hey, I probably shouldn't. That piece of fruit right there is not as good as it's really looking, right? Ariel and Malachi are still looking at that fruit and, oh, that looks pretty good. I think I'm going to take a bite and see what the consequences really are. And so you ask the question, this is where deceit's coming in. You ask the question, and I look at Ariella because I see some chocolate around her face, and I'm like, Ariella, did you just have some candy before dinner after I told you you're not supposed to? And the response is this. My mouth's empty, Daddy. I don't have anything in my mouth, Daddy. Look, Daddy. Ariella, that's not what I asked you. I didn't ask you if something is currently in your mouth. I didn't ask you to show me inside of your mouth. I said, did you just eat some candy before dinner after you were told not to do it? And now the response changes. The response is like this. Malachi had one first. And the finger it does a split second. Malachi had one first. And so now Daddy is stuck because of the way things just rippled, in fact, downhill. Daddy's stuck. Daddy's not a liar. Daddy's going to discipline. Daddy said you're going to get a pop. Daddy said you're going to be in trouble. You're going to be disciplined if you do not do what I told you. Daddy said you cannot have a snack before dinner time. And so because they thought it was a good idea, Daddy, the bad guy that he is, has to discipline and show you that Daddy's not lying. Daddy loves you, but Daddy still has to discipline you for your action. There are consequences for those actions that you just took. Let me read a verse here. Matthew chapter 23. It's 2 verses actually. Verses 27 and 28. And I want to read these verses because we feel that it's super easy to deceive somebody. And a lot of times you can deceive your neighbor. You can deceive your family member. You can deceive the pastor. You can deceive whoever it is. But you can't deceive God. So you can fool yourselves and others just like the Pharisees did here. So let me read it to you. It says, "Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees and hypocrites, for ye are like unto the whited sepulchres, which indeed appear beautiful outward, but are within full of dead men's bones and all of uncleanness. Even so ye also outwardly appear righteous unto men, but within ye all are full of hypocrisy," and here's that word again, iniquity. You can look like those scribes and Pharisees in that pretty white robe that they're wearing, but deep down, because of your pride, because of your deceitfulness, because of your actions that you're trying to place on somebody else, you try to look like this pretty physique out here for everybody else to see, but on the inside, you're really something totally different. The phrase, your actions speak louder than your words. How many people have heard that phrase? Actions speak louder than words. You can say a whole lot of things. You can, pretend to be something, but your actions are really going to show those true colors of who you really are. And your actions, you may not feel like it, but they affect a whole lot of other people other than just you sometimes. We offend His holiness when we choose to do that wrong, whether it's not taking responsibility action or being deceitful on how we answer or manipulate something in order to not take the fall for an action. No one else is responsible for your actions. Only you are. The devil didn't make you do it. He might have shown up. He might have tempted you. He might have beguiled you. But he didn't make you do something. The last portion that I wanted to talk about is blame. And the verse I'm going to read here in just a second is 1 Peter 5:8. And before I read that verse, I thought, very hard about how I wanted to emphasize on blame here. And I thought of different ideas of what I talked about, but only one kept coming to my mind. And so I apologize if it hits very hard or if it's something like, well, man, that was rude. That's not my intentions, but it's the same thought process that kept coming up every time I got to blaming somebody else. 1 Peter 5:8 says, "Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour." I don't know if you realize, but the devil doesn't play fair. He doesn't care if you are the adolescent, 3, 4, 5 years old, trying to be sneaky with that piece of candy, or whether you're 50, 60, 70 and you got the attitude problem and trying to make you feel like your pride is okay and everybody else is around you are the one that is in the wrong and you can just keep being you. He doesn't play fair. He's going to keep doing what he does, and that's going to tempt you and get you to fall and go the wrong direction. And so the example I wanted to use here is, for example, if you have a family that attends a church, and then this family, the family is struggling, they've got loved ones that they are desperately trying to get to know the Lord, they're getting them to come through the doors, and they're doing everything they can to get them to come to church. And this family might be a part of your church for an extended period of time. But, over time, they might be able to get the grandkids or the other relatives or whoever to finally show up. And as they show up, you start to see that change. You start to see, hey, man, that's amazing. Look at this. Where my teens, my youth, whoever, the other family members, we're starting to see a little bit of a change in their life. They're more pleasant to be around. The attitudes are changing. The cussing's going away. The sneaking out of the house is no longer there. And you start to see that change, right? But unfortunately, the sad matter of the fact is, sometimes we lose that family. And because we lose that family, the devil, just like that tree in the middle, and the serpent's like, look at this low-hanging fruit over here. He's like, I see your family's doing really well. I see your families, we're on top of the world. You guys are in church and you're doing what you're supposed to do. People are, family members are getting saved. They're no longer out partying and drinking and doing their thing, but yet the devil's still over here whispering in your ear, man, what about this new job? If I get you this new job, you're only going to miss Wednesdays. You're only going to miss your Wednesdays. That's it if we get this new job. Now I only miss Wednesdays, but the pay's up here. I got a little bit more pay, and, I can sacrifice my Wednesdays. I don't have to be there on Wednesdays. I still got 4 Sundays that I can show up for. And as you get a little bit further on and you find that you're missing those Wednesdays, and then you find that, it's been a long week. Now I might miss 1 or 2 of those Sundays. And before you know it, your whole family is back out of the church again because we went from missing Wednesdays to missing one Sunday to missing a couple Sundays to missing every Sunday. And, well, the issue is the pastor or the elder or the deacon or the youth leader or somebody is following up with phone calls. How you doing? I missed you on Wednesday. I missed you on Sunday. I missed you this and that. Oh, you know, and you hear all these fantastic, yeah, well, somebody wasn't feeling well. Somebody was out of town. That's going to happen. And please, if by all means, I'm not telling you to come to church if you're not feeling well. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not telling you to come to church. But we start to develop more excuses, and they become more routine. And Sundays seem to be the day, or Wednesdays seem to be the day that we find it easy to kick God out of the picture and find those as more relaxing days. And eventually, God's no longer in the picture to the point to where you're like, well, the reason he's not in the picture and I'm not there on a Wednesday or Sunday is because the pastor didn't follow up with a phone call. The pastor didn't come over and visit me. The youth leader didn't call my children. The teachers didn't. My kid can't even remember what he learned in Sunday school. So it's just not doing enough for me on Wednesdays and Sundays like I thought it would be. And the world just enticed me at this little bitty apple. I'm getting so much right here. And Satan's like, oh, you got tomorrow, you got next week. So we find it that easy to blame somebody else as why we're not in church anymore. And we wonder why our families are falling apart. And we wonder why the churches are falling apart. And we wonder why the churches are getting smaller, because people are finding it easy to point the finger and blame the church or somebody else in there for their actions. And they don't even want to visit another church. They're like, well, the church is full of hypocrites, so I don't want to go. Well, that's like saying the gym is full of out-of-shape people, so I don't want to go. Well, unfortunately, there's going to be some out-of-shape people there, but you know what they're doing? They're working on getting in shape. That's why they're showing up. You know why we're in church? Yeah, there are some sinners in church. Yeah, or there are some people that are fighting and dealing with some things in church. But they're there because they're working on something inside of here. And so if you're going to blame somebody because of something that happened in your family or because of the decision that you made outside of here and that you're no longer going to attend church for because of that, well, I don't think your heart was right in the first place if you're going to put the blame on somebody else and you can't take a little bit of responsibility for your actions. So the three things: pride, our attitude, our anger, whether it's sarcasm, we got to learn to swallow that pride and take care of those actions and take those responsibilities for ourselves. The deceitfulness, because we find it real easy. I just use my kids as an example, but as an adult, it's just as easy for us to manipulate the truth or not tell all of the whole story in order to not take the fall for what's getting ready to happen possibly. Or 100% I'm going to blame somebody else. I'm not in church because of somebody else. I'm not there because somebody else didn't do something for me. No. You're not there because you chose not to be there and you saw that little fruit that's hanging in that tree that Satan's over there saying just one bite, it's not going to hurt. And you look at those consequences and you're like, well, I think the consequences are going to be worth it this one time. And before you know it, those consequences cost you a whole lot more. And so you have to ask yourself, the actions that I'm about to take, is the ripple effect from my actions going to be positive or going to be negative? Am I going to swallow my pride? Am I going to get rid of the deceitfulness in my own heart? Am I going to stop blaming others and take responsibility for my actions? Am I going to have a positive ripple effect to where people actually want to be around me and spend time with me because I'm starting to show that, hey, these actions aren't mine. My actions are God's actions. My moves are His moves. My words are His words. And it's no longer about me, but it's about Him and what you can do for somebody else. So I just wanted to end with that. I know it's kind of like a direct ending, but, just taking responsibility for our own actions, because you are the one responsible for your actions. Nobody else is. And understand that your actions cause a ripple effect, even though you might not see them. Pastor?
I got a whole page and a half of notes. I was scribbling, though. That doesn't mean I can read them. I just want to share something. He said it back earlier. Driving through the restaurant, through the drive-thru, I would have done exactly the same thing. Exactly. And then probably about halfway home, I'd have thought, man, I need to drive back over there. Oh, man, I need to drive back over there and tell them I'm sorry. But the reason I wanted to refer back to that is because the nasty that you feel on the inside when you make your excuse, that's a good thing if you look at it and say, that's my nasty. God, I am sorry. That is me. It's a bad thing if the nasty feeling's no longer there. Then there's a problem. If you don't feel the nasty, all that's left is your ego, your pride, your conceit. I'm right in this thing, and they should have given me a receipt. If that's all there is, and you drive off there with your head held high, there is a problem. But when the nasty is there, that's God touching you, putting the love of His presence on your heart, saying, no, let's work on this. Let's all stand to our feet tonight. How many of you love, you don't love the feeling of conviction when you're trying to be right, but you love the chastening of the Lord because that's what shows you you're His. Father, we love you. Thank you for your word tonight. Thank you for speaking into our lives, into our hearts. Thank you for showing up during praise and worship, for just allowing us to come and spend a little time with you. Lord, I just ask you, give everyone a safe ride home tonight and get us all back here Sunday for a beautiful day of baptism and celebration for those who have come to trust in you as Lord and Savior. In Jesus' name, hallelujah. God bless you. Have a good evening.